Слава. Нового мало, да? Окей.
Більше я не скажу.
Пані
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 119th day of Russian invasion and the 9th year of the war of Russian Federation against Ukraine. My name is Andriy Shevchenko, and from behalf of the Media Center Ukraine and Ukrinform, I welcome all the journalists who are telling about our fight for freedom. Our new guest is Oleksandr Motuzyanyk, the spokesperson of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. Oleksandr, which are the latest news of today? Hello everyone, dear friends. So to your attention, information about the huge liberation war which Ukraine is having for its independence as of today, 9 a.m. Kyiv time. So this is the 119th day of the big liberating war of the Ukrainian people. The main aim of the adversary at this stage is still the exit to the administrative borders of Luhansk and Donetsk oblasts, keeping the stability of the land corridor with the temporarily occupied Crimea and blocking of the marine communications of Ukraine in the northern western part of the Black Sea. In spite of the huge losses in the staff and equipment, the occupiers are still more numerous than the Ukrainian defenders in the armament, and they are trying to win over with the quantity only. At some of the spheres, for one shot of the Ukrainian artillery, we have 6 and more shots of the enemy. And thus the efficiency of the actions of the Russian units is still low, especially in the urban areas. The enemy is still having intensive fire impact along the whole contact line in Donetsk and Luhansk regions. The hottest part of the front line is still the part of Severodonetsk. And also the operational tactical aviation of the enemy had at least 15 flights to strike the aviation shelling against the objects on the territory of Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, Kherson and Odessa regions, including with the guided aviation missiles of the type X-31-59. Besides that, the aggressor shelled Odessa region with the coastal missile systems Bastion P and Bal, with the use of missiles Onyx and KR-X-35 accordingly. This was done from the territory of the occupied Crimea. Now, in a nutshell about the main directions. At Donetsk direction, the Ukrainian troops are stopping the attempts of the adversary to have full control over Severodonetsk city. The enemy is providing offensive, trying to block the units of the defense forces in the settlements of Borivske and Voronove and to block main logistics ways from Bakhmut. As for now, the military actions are still ongoing. So trying to expose the artillery and firing positions, the enemy had the exploratory attacks in the directions of Mytolkina-Voronove and Mytolkina-Sirotine. In the Bakhmut direction, the armed forces of Ukraine are having combats with the units of the occupiers who concentrated their main efforts trying to surround the defense forces around the settlement of Zolote and also to control the road of Bakhmut-Lysychansk. The Ukrainian defenders repulsed the enemy in the direction of Mironivka-Samagiria and stopped the offensive of the occupiers in Molodizhne-Katarinivka. At Avdiivka, Kurakhove, Novopavlivka and Zaporizhia directions, the active combats were not done, but there the Russian occupiers are firing from tanks, the reactive artillery against the positions of the Ukrainian troops, trying not to move our reserves to other threatening directions. At the Kharkiv direction, the units of Russian troops are keeping the edges which they had already and establishing them not to have the defense forces closer to the state border, and also at the rear of the groups of the occupational troops at the Slovyansk department. The aggressor had intensive artillery shelling of the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine around Kharkiv, Stary Saltiv, Rubizhne and Chepil. Slovyansky direction, there the groups of the enemy is acting, which includes the 1st Tank Army, the 20th, 29th, 35th, 36th Armies, and also the 68th Army Corps. Besides that, they also have the airborne units of Russian occupiers. All of those troops are now focused to find the weak places in the defense of armed forces of Ukraine and creation of the conditions to restore the offensive in the direction of Izum-Slovyansk. The enemy had intense fires in the direction of the positions of our troops around Bohorodichne, Krasnopilla and Adamivka, and also had air reconnaissance with the use of 2 UAVs Orlan-10 around Izum. Pivdenny Bug direction, the Russian occupiers with the groups of the 8th, 49th Armies, the 22nd Army Corps of the Southern Military area and also airborne troops wanted not to let our arms to have counter-offensive in Kherson and Mykolaiv regions. With this aim, the enemy is trying to keep the taken edge and to improve the engineering equipment of their positions. As for Mykolaiv direction, the occupiers have had aviation strikes with the use of helicopters Ka-52 close to Bilakrinitsa settlements. To assess the results around Ochakiv, they used the UAV of operational tactical level of the type 4 post. At Kryvyi Rih direction, aggressor, to find out the changes in the positions of our troops, had the air reconnaissance with the use of the UAV Orlan-10 around the settlements of Trudolubivka and Velika Kostromka. Volyn and Polisia directions. There were no serious changes in the situation during the previous 24 years as well as during the previous years. The same units of Belarusian army, up to 7 battalions, are accomplishing the missions, strengthening the so-called strengthening the Ukrainian-Belarus border. We are speaking about Brest and Gomel regions. The main efforts of Belarusian soldiers are conducting reconnaissance, engineering equipment of the positions, and the protection of the state border, and they began to involve the conscripts. To conduct the measures of the operational masking and showing of their presence, the units of the armed forces of Republic of Belarus are locating in the bordering with Ukraine areas the wooden models of tanks. And also they go on checking the military capacities of the armed forces of Belarus, which will go on approximately to the 25th of June this year. I will mention that the threat of the missile and aviation strikes from the territory of Belarus against the territory of Ukraine is still here. Siversky direction. To cover the part of Russian-Ukrainian border in Bryansk and Kursk regions, the Russians have up to 3 battalion tactical groups from the 1st Tank Army of the Western military area and also the units of the airborne troops. They go on to equip the engineering of the border areas of Bryansk region, and also they had the mine-thrower fire around the settlements of Seredina Buda and Miropilla, Sumy region, 5 kilometers to the state border of Ukraine, and also the settlement of Gremyach, Chernihiv region, 2 kilometers to the state border of Ukraine. The Black Sea and Azov operational zones. The warships of the Black Sea Fleet of the Armed Forces of Russian Federation, which are now in the equatory of the Black and the Azov Seas, go on blocking and isolating the combat area and providing reconnaissance. And also the aggressor is blocking the civilian shipping in the northern western part of the Black Sea. According to the data of our intelligence, as of today's morning, they are ready to use missiles with the sixth ships with missiles of caliber type, and it may be up to 44 missiles. Meanwhile, the armed forces of Ukraine are repulsing and deterring the troops of Russian occupiers, inflicting serious losses of the enemy. In particular, just during the previous 24 hours, the defense forces of Ukraine have killed 130 occupiers, 8 armored war vehicles, 1 anti-air defense system, 1 Russian helicopter, 3 enemy's UAVs, 6 units of automobile, and 1 special equipment of Russian army. Besides that, the military aviation of the fleet of Ukraine has destroyed the overall warehouses of the ammunition of the enemy. So the numbers of the losses of the enemy can be seen at the slide. That's it from me. Thank you for your attention. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. Are there any questions? Please. Victoria Nakonechna, Ukrinform. I will have 2 questions, but they are interconnected. Does the intelligence have the information how active is the mobilization in Belarus, and what's the mood among the Belarusians about the possible participants in the war in Ukraine? And the second question, today we had the information that Russia has brought to Belarus a new batch of missile systems and MLRSs. Can you confirm it? As for the second question, this information is being confirmed. As for now, I cannot answer. We will check this info. As of today, the territory of Belarus has some of the Russian troops, and they have the tactical missile systems like Iskander, of Iskander type. It is true. So the threat of missile strikes is still there. As for the actions of Belarusian army, we don't have information that they have mobilization. As of today, according to the course of the announced by the Belarusian authorities, they create the so-called Southern Operational Command, which foresees the increase of the number of the armed forces of Belarus for more than 20,000. Because of that, they have the recruitment campaign. But so I don't have information about mobilization. Besides that, we need to understand in what cases we have mobilization. We need to understand that as well. As of today, as far as I know, there is no martial law in Belarus. This is my answer. Are there any other questions left? Oleksandr Motuzyanyk, the spokesperson of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you, dear friends. Believe in the armed forces of Ukraine. Check the information. Trust only the official sources. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. Our next briefing will be at 3:30. We are waiting for the Olga Stefanishyna, Vice Prime Minister of Ukraine. Thank you. Stand with Ukraine.